His debut novel, Neuromancer, was the first to win the Triple Crown of Science Fiction Awards for Literature. Hi, my name is Stephanie, and welcome to WatchMojo.com. And today we're speaking to author William Gibson about his writing. Your work has been first categorized as cyberpunk and then steampunk, and now it's being categorized more as speculative or contemporary fiction. Why would you say your writing has moved in this direction?
I think it's less a matter of my writing having changed as the descriptors which are applied to my writing having changed. Quite a bit of the second half of the 20th century I was writing about the 21st century. It was an imaginary 21st century. I could only invent that stuff out of the material of the present that I was working in. So I knew that in some sense Neuromancer my first novel would ultimately be about 1981, the year in which it was written. And I continued to take that for granted. So it always seemed to me that in a sense I was writing about the present. And when I found myself finally in the real 21st century, I thought, well, this is interesting. Here I am in what was previously an imaginary future. It's actually much more complex than any imaginary future anyone would ever be able to imagine. And it seems to contain kind of an amazing number of overlapping, world-affecting science fiction scenarios. You got global warming, the AIDS epidemic, it's the internet, all these things that each of which would have been more than enough to base a science fiction novel on in 1981. They're all happening simultaneously in an era of exponential, technologically driven social change. So that's really science fiction-y, I thought. So given all of that, I thought, why not use the toolkit of science fiction that I developed in the 20th century to work with that material. And I would treat the present of the first decade of the 21st century as though it were an imaginary future. And just use my standard issue sci-fi writer toolkit on the unthinkable present that we all inhabit. And it's been really fun.
You coined the term cyberspace, and you've also been credited with helping the growth of virtual environments on the internet and in video games. So what do you think about the impact of your work on the information age?
I don't actually see myself as having been a very large influence on that stuff, because I was only able to do what I did because there were actual entrepreneurs and technologists around who were developing things like the things I described in my novels, and I always accessed as much of that as I could. Now, given that a lot of that I was doing it prior to the World Wide Web, what little of that stuff I could find, I had to sort of find it in the physical world. So often I would find things that most people had no way of knowing about. Like I always had my antenna out, and if I met scientists, I would ask them what's the craziest new invention you've heard of? And I'd remember that, and it would eventually find its way into a story. So even there, I was working with a lot of existing material, but the public didn't have the same sort of access. Now today, that's really different, because I'm unlikely to hear about I'm unlikely to hear about it before Wired or Gizmodo hear about it. I mean, I usually hear about it from them. Information on potentially game-changing emergent technologies travels like at the speed of light.
Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.